best things about Alderney, I think, hard to get here, isn't it? You can go to a beach here and be pretty much on your own.
Oh.
You want to grab some ginger beer and steel butter.
I don't think there's a really bad thing about living over here.
I don't think there is anything.
Fog.
I've got a story about Ian Botham.
John Arnold.
Julie Andrews lived here.
It's so strange.
Best kept secret of the Channel Islands.
Mark Steele's in town.
Thanks very much. Welcome to Mark Steele's in Town, which this week comes from St Anne, the capital of Alderney, the charming Channel Island with the quaint, affectionate motto, why does bloody Guernsey get everything? Why not us, bloody Guernsey? For example, Alderney people seem to complain that when bands or performers come to the Channel Isles, they generally go to Guernsey, and it is a puzzle why instead they don't come here to an island 3 feet long with a population of 9. Because you don't make it easy to get here, do you? I thought there's bound to be a couple of ferries a day from Guernsey, but there's 2 a week, carefully coordinated, because the Alderney ferry leaves just before the other one arrives. With anything up to a 4-day wait. And what I really like is I think you do that on purpose. But the main way of getting here is from Guernsey on a Trilander plane. And if you're not used to it, it's not the sturdiest of jumbo jets. One of the Trilanders is bright yellow, and you call it Joey, and it's got a smiley face with a red nose painted on it, which is fun, but shouldn't you take designing aeroplanes a bit more seriously? The Trilanders have 16 seats, one of which is next to the pilot, and a bloke from the airport calls each person's name individually to get on the plane. I thought, oh, there's been a mistake, I've joined the RAF. And then this bloke holds the door open so you could squeeze in, and within seconds you forget any fear that you had that this thing is too small, as that's replaced by the fear that it's too old. And 3 people have told me, did you get the one called GBDTO? That's fun because it's got a leaky roof. A leaky roof! A plane! Do you know this one? On my flight, there was a bloke hanging onto the door handle. And when we arrived, I said, were you a bit nervous, mate? And he went, oh, no, I know this plane, and the handle comes loose if you don't count. I'm not joking, it was terrifying. I bet there are Red Arrows pilots who go, sod that, I'm not going on a Trilander. At least when smoke comes out of their planes, it's on purpose for a display. I think this is how you encourage people to live here, isn't it? You make it really hard to get here, but once they're here, they're terrified of ever getting the plane back. I think you like the old planes with the face, because you're like an island of big kids in Alderney. And they suit you. That's why I love the airport here. The way you pretend that it's like big airports. Because when you land here, the baggage man opens the boot of the plane and he gets out your bag, stood right next to you, but instead of just handing you your bag, he takes you to the little rolling rack thing and he puts it on there, but it's broken, so you just pick it up and take it straight back. I love the way you know the pilots' names, don't you? What are they? Is it Dave, one of them? Yeah. And what are the other ones? Warwick. Will, Dave, Warwick and Will. Is that it? That's brilliant to know the pilot's name. So Alderney is 3 miles long, 1.5 miles wide, 7 miles from France, and it's part of the Bailiwick of Guernsey. There are less than 2,000 people here. Most are in the town of St Anne. According to my book there, Alderney, there are many Guernsey people who have never been past St Anne when they visit the island. The Guernsey bastards. They come here and the only place they go to is the only place there is. You'd think they'd have the decency to go to Longy Common to look at the moss, wouldn't you? But Even though it's a short walk from one end of the island to the other end of the island, you all seem to drive round and round and round. Where are you going? I can imagine you're just driving round and round, thinking if we go round enough times, we might find something new. Where are you going? Into town. Most of you must live in the town. No? What sort of place? You live in the countryside. And most of you have 2 cars.
We've got people that have a car just to go to the Impo with rubbish.
To go to the where? The tip. That people have a car just so they can drive to the rubbish tip. You are very strange. It's hard to do anything in Alderney, it strikes me, without everybody knowing. You go into Gloria's for a cup of tea and someone says, I heard you looked out of the window this morning. I hear you're getting divorced. You hear all about yourself in Alderney. In other cultures, people introduce each other. Kevin, this is Alison. Alison, this is Kevin. But here, if you say that, they're both likely to go, I know, we were married for 9 years. The book Out and About in Alderney does you proud because it also tries to attract visitors by saying Alderney differs from the other Channel Islands. It has 7 species of dragonfly. You want to keep that quiet or the place will be flooded. I knew there was something different about here. There's loads of activities here. A leaflet advertising events at this very hall says last night, come to the talk by Dr. George McGavin on the history of dung. And the talk was called, I'm not making this up, The Excrement Factor. I think one of your main tourist attractions is the jobs you have. Firstly, because there's just one of everything. But even with one person for each job, there aren't enough people to go round. So everyone seems to have 2 jobs. Is this right? Yeah. The window cleaner will say, oh, I'm not here Wednesday because I'm also an astronaut. Last week I left my cloth in orbit, had to send off to Guernsey for a new one. Someone told me the radiographer is also a pig farmer. Yeah. And then I met the radiographer that is also a pig farmer. Is Tess here? Yeah. Tess, I would imagine you must be the only radiographer stroke pig farmer in Alderney.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one of both of those.
Not only do you raise pigs, but also you race them, don't you?
Yeah, the pigs have a wonderful time. Everybody loves it. It's great.
Is it flat racing or jumps?
We do 3 races. The first race is a flat race, the second race is over hurdles, and the third race incorporates a water jump.
Oh, brilliant. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
I expect the commentator is also a plumber. Who's got the strangest combination of jobs? Is there anyone here with, like...
One of the guys that will check you in for the airline is also the undertaker.
One of the guys who checks you onto the plane is also the undertaker. So if it's a particularly windy day, does he go, oh, I'll be seeing you again in a minute? According to the Alderney scrapbook, a few years ago it said, if you're not in when the milkman calls, Derek will leave what he thinks you need and take the money from a jar in the kitchen. This is a marvellous system. Oh, I see you've got a drum kit and a hovercraft. Yeah, Derek thought we needed them. Why weren't in? He left them, took 70 grand from a jar in the kitchen. I went in a cafe this morning. I asked for some toast, and that... She said, you can't have toast, it's after 10:30. There does seem to be a routine if you go shopping here. Firstly, the shop will be shut. Then the next stage, when you go back, it will be open, but there'll be no one in it. And then eventually someone arrives, but whatever you're after, they haven't got it. And then they look at you like you're an idiot for asking for it. And I've got used to that routine over the time I've been here. I went to buy some trousers, and the only ones in my size at all were these bright red ones. And then I was shown some that were 2 sizes too big. When I said, oh, no, I don't think they'll fit, I was told, oh, well, it's up to you then. Because Alderney does seem to possess a marvellous, charming cocktail of overwhelming friendliness mixed with entirely unnecessary surliness. It's a brilliant mix. The Alderney government produced a paper encouraging people to move here that goes, whether you are a vigorous early retiree who wants to benefit from low personal income tax rates, or the managing director of a successful business who wants to reduce your corporation tax burden, you will find like-minded people on Alderney. Now it starts to make sense. I bet the slogan on the coat of arms here is cash in hand, no VAT, no questions asked, bish bosh, off you go. And you all act so innocent, don't you? We love it here because there are 7 species of dragonfly. The other theory I've got is that the way things are paid for is that the government comes round on the 6th of April, gives you what it thinks you need and takes stuff from a jar in the kitchen. It's not just tax, of course, here. You've also made yourself the world centre of online gambling. And I love the fact that around the world, Russian oligarchs are sticking $500,000 on online roulette going, please come up red, with no idea this is being organised in a place half a mile wide where you can't buy trousers. That's brilliant. The natural resource you've got here, of course, is wildlife. I went on the wildlife walk. It was brilliant, because we went round for hours and saw hardly any wildlife at all. But it didn't matter. There was this lovely Spanish lad in charge, a Spanish lad, and he kept saying, oh, sometimes we see bird here, but there's none here today. And he had this book. And he kept going, there is no owl here, but if there was owl, it would look like one in my book. That was brilliant. It was so much more fun than real wildlife. I thought he was going to go, sometimes just here in Castalia there are very much brontosaurus, but tonight not warm enough for them, so maybe look in my book of dinosaurs is one. And then in a minute I show you a picture of Womble. And then we got lost in an island that you can see the whole of if you stand on tiptoes. Because we went down this bank along a path, and then the path ran out. And we said to the guides, are you sure this is the path? And the woman went, oh, I don't know, we've never been this far before. And then she laughed and she went, well, you wouldn't have come here on your own, would you? No. And you could see that there was the cliff edge. You think, well, they know what they're doing. I said, well, close to the cliff edge. We might just sort of go down a sheer drop. And she said, yeah, we might do. She said... It was brilliant. And then, on the way back, to be fair, on the way back, we saw one of Alderney's prized assets that, if you marketed it properly, could make more money than an oil field, because Alderney is the home of the blonde hedgehog. According to Out and About in Alderney, it's rumoured that the first pair were brought to Alderney after the war from Harrods in London. Is this what you get told? You've managed to be madder than the creationists, haven't you? Never mind Darwin, animals come from shops. My other favourite wildlife sighting while I've been here was seeing the chickens at Valefield. The first time I went past, I was a bit worried, to be honest, because one of them escaped and it was sat in the road and a car came and I thought, oh no, chicken in the road, oh, it's going to get squashed, but cars just stop until the chicken's passed. This is the nearest thing that Alderney has to a set of traffic lights. Now, up until a few generations ago, there was an Alderney dialect. Now, one of the only people who still knows that language is the very marvellous Royston. Royston, was Alderney patois? What is it?
It was a Norman patois, very close to Guernsey, and the patois of La Hague, just across the way.
How many people still know the patois now? Like, if
no one, quite literally.
Just you?
Well, it's one of the many forms of French that existed. In the 13th century, it was a dominant dialect in France, but it was overtaken by the Parisian dialect.
Do you think there's any chance that it might be found somewhere and re-put together, you know?
Well, I'm trying to do that. I've done a bit of research, and the French teacher at the school said to me, look, why not try and resurrect it like they're doing in Guernsey and Jersey and teach it to the school children? And we've set up a patois club after school on Thursday afternoons. Oh, shit, I forgot to go.
That is absolutely brilliant. And so the spread and revival of the Guernsey dialect was ruined. Not only that, but the French teacher would have done it quicker, but she's also a painter and decorator. Thank you very much to Joyce. Nothing's normal here, but this is a brilliant thing. It looks normal, but it's not. For centuries, Alderney was ruled by a hereditary governor from the Le Mesurier family. Now, in most areas of the world, this sort of medieval aristocratic system was overthrown by some sort of uprising. But here, in 1823, Governor Jean Le Mesurier had been financing the island by selling alcohol to smugglers, who bought the alcohol here because this was the only place that sold it with no tax. Now, the British came over to stop this scheme in the 1820s, so Alderney got into financial problems, and Governor Le Mesurier decided he was fed up with running an island. He sold his hereditary rule and went to live in Bournemouth. This must be the most peaceful end to any ruling dynasty ever. Especially as one of the descendants was Jean Le Mesurier, who played Sergeant Wilson in Dad's Army. By 1830, Alderney advanced to the point where a man called Henry Inglis wrote this about you in a guidebook. Cow dung is frequently used as fuel, and the mode of life is primitive, though not as primitive as in Jersey or Guernsey. Even better, the guidebook goes on to say cow farmers in Jersey or Guernsey are so primitive that they barely know how to operate an X-ray machine. There is another controversial issue. Is there such a thing as an Alderney cow? There was an Alderney cow. Wikipedia says the Alderney cow was more like a deer than a cow. I also read the Alderney cow didn't chew grass, it chewed asparagus. Because they got here after they were bought from Fortnum and Mason. What I find amazing is that even the way you were invaded by the Germans was peculiar. To start with, in 1940, any civilian travel between the islands was stopped. So my Alderney scrapbook tells the story of Leonard Peapod Palmer. Leonard Peapod Palmer suffered from this, finding himself stuck in Guernsey, unable to rejoin his wife in Alderney. Then he had the idea of posting himself to Alderney as a parcel. He weighed himself, bought the correct stamp and presented himself to the post office at St Peter Port. He was rubber stamped, and on arrival in Alderney, Peapod was met by his wife and daughter, but couldn't be handed over until taken to the post office and formally delivered. Sadly, travelling to Alderney has become much more difficult since then. Now, eventually, in 1940, a ship arrived in Alderney with French sailors warning that the Germans were preparing to take over, and the local judge called a meeting where he asked who fancied staying to live under the Third Reich and who might prefer to leave. And there is a transcript of the meeting with some people suggested fighting the Germans with their bare hands, and then Mr. Le Mesurier said, "Are you sure that's wise?" While an older man ran round the hall going, "Don't panic!" In the end, from the whole of Alderney, only 7 islanders stayed, and everybody else got on a ship and went to Weymouth. Now, one of the reasons that the Germans were keen on Alderney is there were already forts all round the island, built by the British in the 1860s to stop an invasion. So that was a worthwhile project, wasn't it? The Nazis didn't have everything easily. As described in the book, their Fortress Island. Of all the woes for the German garrison, they were attacked by an infection which caused diarrhoea caused by milk from the diseased cows. Now, luckily, next Monday you can learn the details of this in a talk called The History of Diarrhoea by Dr. George McGavin here at the Island Hall. Strangely, the German soldiers who were stationed here didn't seem to like Alderney. They even wrote a song about how dreadful life was, called Auf Alderney, Auf Alderney. What a cheek! Invading somewhere, then moaning about being there. I suppose they all put their reviews on TripAdvisor. 1 star, awful. The cobbled street makes it really hard to goose step. We all had diarrhoea. I only saw 3 species of dragonfly. I found the song, Auf Alderney, and it was by Kraftwerk. It went... Auf Alderney, Auf Alderney. Bing! Ping! I hate it here, I've got diarrhoea. Auf Alderney. In May 1945, the Germans surrendered, as we know, and everyone was then able, bit by bit, to come back. Took a while. The possessions of everybody who'd left had been kept, and they were now dumped on buttes. And then a whistle was blown, and as soon as the whistle blew, everyone was able to just rush and just get their possessions back that they'd left in 1940. So, Royston, you can remember the...
I only came back in 46.
It must have been extraordinary, though, to see the place that had been ransacked by these people and you're back again.
It was ruination, and it was pretty appalling. And after all that hope of coming back home, just to... You know, it was heartbreaking. I think that generation were marvellous. They stuck it out and rebuilt the island, which was, you know, I think something quite remarkable.
And of course, after the war, Alderney people used German bunkers as country houses. Well, our main home is in St Anne, but we do have a little Nazi bunker up at Bray. There's a swastika on the wall that makes a very handy spice rack. Does everybody know the Australian bunker? Yeah. The Australian bunker is one of the most remarkable bits of recycling I've ever come across. Luckily, we have Mark with us here, and so you are responsible for the Australian bunker.
I am, yes. It was a searchlight bunker that we put up some walls, painted it, put a barbecue in there, and that's what we do. The Aussie barbecue bunker. When the flag is up, we're there.
Like the Queen? The Queen should do this at Buckingham Palace. When it's up, that means you can pop in and I'll put some sausages on the barbie. That you're not just peaceful and calm in Alderney, you can get excited. In fact, not long ago you had a riot. As far as I can work out, the revolution followed the arrest of Joe Hammond. And he was arrested for drink driving by 2 police who were here from Guernsey. And then, according to the article, the Guernsey men called in the 2 resident Alderney policemen, who in turn called up special constables, the fire brigade and the harbour master's staff. Which may sound a lot, but they were all the same person. I bet even if you looted the shops, you still couldn't find any trousers. Some people called it a popular uprising, but Bill Warden, a member of the state, said there are a lot of people here who would be classified as eccentric anywhere else, perhaps a little mad. I'm saying nothing. See, I think Bill is right at one level about the sort of people who settle here. They don't just want peace, they want a life that's slightly wrong. Even the famous people who come here are like that, like the cricket commentator and radical liberal John Arlott and Ian Botham. And Botham said about Arlott, when we both had places on Alderney, at 9:06 every morning, the phone would ring. John would say, "Come on over and make sure you bring your thirst with you." I love the way Arlott must have thought, I can't ring him dead on 9 or he'll think I've got some sort of problem. Because you do seem to like a drink. Maybe this explains the 7 people who stayed during the war. They woke up one morning and thought, oh, where am I? Oh, but hang on, why is everyone speaking German? And Julie Andrews lived here, didn't she, for a while? She must have thought, these people have the right idea. Instead of waiting for the Nazis to arrive and then running over the mountains to get away from them, as soon as you hear they might be on the way, pop on a boat and head straight to Weymouth. Doe, a cow that's like a deer. Far is not a word we know. Tea, a drink with brandy in. Me, whose tax is always low, which means I keep my do. Eccentric. Bill is right. Eccentric is what you are. You've made your own radio station, Key FM. Hi, we're here with some smooth sounds to ease you through the chaos of your ordinary day, whether you're feeding pigs on the way to an X-ray or stuck in undergrowth on a wildlife walk. Just sit back and relax. This is Diana Ross on Key. Do you have traffic reports? I'd love to hear that. OK, this is Martha on 2020 Alderney traffic update. Word coming in of a hold-up over at Valfield. Chicken seems to be crossing the road. So Alderney to me feels as if you're looking at a place through a slightly wonky mirror. You can sort of recognise things, but everything seems slightly the wrong shape. But it looks to me like you like it like that. Because I like that it's hard to get here, and I think you like it like that, don't you? Because I think you should have to make an effort and take days on uncoordinated boats and ageing yellow planes. It's meant to be childish here, which is why you have 2 jobs and draw faces on planes and your alcoholic drink is in a milkshake. And you make your butter a funny luminous yellow, and you go, Guernsey gets things, it's not fair, and you're not interested in boring grown-up stuff like paying tax. And a poster at your lovely dinky cinema advertising the Oscar-nominated film Whiplash says, Whiplash is sponsored by Sam Chadwick's Meat Drawer and Bonus Ball. It's childish. That's why you love it. It's a brilliant place to be a kid until you're 51. And one of the most famous people to live on Alderney was Elizabeth Beresford, who wrote The Wombles, one of the classic children's stories. Which is why Alderney was the name of one of her favourite Wombles. Even the Wikipedia page for Alderney the Womble starts, Alderney tends to have a unique way of doing things and dares to be different. Which sounds right, doesn't it? So I will leave you, Alderney, with one of the early stories about the Womble that you gave its name to. And I'll leave you with this. Hello, Alderney, said Great Uncle Bulgaria. You live in a beautiful part of Wimbledon Common. But unfortunately, it's taken me 4 days to get here. You should have done what I did, said Alderney. I built a plane out of old crisp packets and scrawled on it with a felt pen. Come along, said Alderney. Let's spend all day picking up litter. Why don't the council pick it up for once, asked Tobermory. They've no money, said Alderney, because no one pays any tax. Along came Wellington. Hello, Wombles, he said. I hear Madame Chalet's getting divorced. Why is that, said all the other Wombles. Well, she found out her husband had another job as a clanger. Thanks very much.
Mark Steele's in Town was written and performed by Mark Steele, with additional material by Pete Sinclair. It was produced in Alderney by Carl Cooper. It was a BBC comedy production.
That's very kind. Well, I hope I didn't insult you.